The Emmy has its place, but what I've realized is that the real reward of all of that work has been the many friendships that I've developed with really spectacular people.
If you're a younger millennial or a Zoomer, you probably know Andre Braugher as Captain Raymond Holt on that sitcom you don't want to admit to liking after the year 2020. But if you were a working actor in the 1990s, you hated him, because he was the swinging dick in chief on Homicide, Life on the Street, the fact-based procedural cop drama that preceded The Wire, based on the nonfiction book by David Simon, Homicide, A Year on the Killing Streets. The centerpiece of almost every episode was the interrogation scene, and Braugher was the star of the show as he stepped into the box and put on an Oscar-caliber performance week after week. One of my favorites was in the season 3 episode Endgame, where he plays into the prejudices of a white supremacist played by Steve Buscemi, taking control of the situation by pretending to be the dumbest guy in the room while running circles around his prey.
The more he talks, the deeper he steps into the crap.
Like I said, you're ignorant.
He who loses control loses.
This was the kind of thing any TV actor would kill for, and it stacked Braugher's trophy case with a half dozen awards, including an Emmy and a satellite. My favorite episode of any procedural cop show, period, and somewhere in my top 5 TV episodes of all time, in any category, doesn't actually include a scene in the interrogation room. Subway, from season 6. The episode starts with the usual murder show prologue with Vincent D'Onofrio as the unlucky bastard salesman John Lang getting pushed in front of a subway train in a stylized flurry of shots. Imagine getting murdered to the sound of these fucking Fruitopia-era Lilith Fair hippies. These assholes were everywhere in the mid-90s. The real horror show begins shortly after we get back from the opening credits. There is some confusion as to what Homicide is doing here when we realize that the victim is still breathing, the guest of honor at his own wake.
You said victim?
He's gonna be.
Horror is all in the details, and this episode is packed with them. Like when the paramedics talk about going through the motions like there's any hope of saving him, just to give the poor guy something to look forward to.
We're gonna hitch those pressure pants onto him, keep his guts from falling into his legs.
So the uniform tells me there's no way he's fast.
We have to give the poor bastard some hope, some idea that something's being done for him.
Nobody knows how to tell him that he's never coming out from under that train. They ask if he wants a priest, if he has any family nearby, and he's just not getting it. Once it does start to become clear, he reacts to his impending doom with more annoyance than terror, even demanding his fare back since he won't be able to board the train when he's dead.
I want my fare back.
You what?
My $1.35. I paid my fare, I didn't get my ride.
Eventually he settles on something resembling relief. There's nothing that can be done, and once he accepts that, it's a little easier to keep his spirits up. The central thread of this episode is the back and forth between Lang and Detective Pembleton, with Frank developing a rapport with the guy so that they can bring him in to help solve his own murder.
Not every day you talk to a dead man, huh?
But really, Frank's job is to bear witness. Notoriously standoffish and private, all of the skills that Frank has developed as an interrogator are called on to supply empathy and comfort in a situation with no answers.
They pull me out, and then what?
I don't know.
And Lang's no picnic. He's presented as kind of an asshole even before he has the best possible excuse to be one. The episode's writer, James Yoshimura, explained that tragedy can happen to jerky people too, and I think it'd be much more interesting to see how that kind of character's circumstances transcend the typical cliched TV kind of victim. Helping to solve your own murder is a clever hook, but Subway is less concerned with cutesy subversion of expectations or playing with the structure of a cop procedural than it is in humanizing the stiffs.
You got somebody ground up like hamburger.
Look, he is alive.
And contemplating the question of mortality that we're all going to have to confront head on sooner or later. This episode comes after an arc revolving around Frank Pembleton having a stroke in the middle of an interrogation, and it's Frank's mortality in particular that's being considered as he walks back up to the surface at the end of the show. The nuts and bolts of the case seem trivial compared with Subway's grander considerations, with Lang refusing to even say his killer's name.
You think because there's nothing between me and this beard, why am I even saying that twerp's name?
D'Onofrio does a lot of the heavy lifting in this episode, delivering emotional monologues while pinned under a subway and soaked in sweat. Meanwhile, Braugher illustrates the importance of active listening. Even when you're Vincent D'Onofrio, you're only as good as your scene partner. Homicide isn't streaming anywhere, and DVD sets go for like $100-$200, so I almost feel guilty recommending something that's going to be a pain in the ass to track down, but it's worth it. Andre Braugher was a towering heavyweight in a generation of TV actors that had little tolerance for hacks, and Subway was one of his finest moments. If you liked this video, don't forget to like and subscribe.